Hi, I'm Hannah. My family had a secret. Wanna know what it was? Let's go to Japan then! You don't need to buy a ticket, but be sure to support the channel by pressing those like and subscribe buttons. Arigato! My dad was a famous Hollywood actor. I can't tell you his real name. Let me just say you've definitely heard of him. I'll just call him, Robert X. This story began before I was even born. Dad was just starting his career when he got a chance to star in a Japanese TV series. He signed a contract and moved to Japan with my mom, who was pregnant with me at the time. Dad worked while Mom watched him and thought about the name for her daughter. At the time, the TV series Hannah Montana was very popular, and my mom was a fan of Miley Cyrus. Well, we solved the mystery of my name, but that's not the family secret I told you about. We lived in Japan for another 7 years after I was born, so I knew the language and the local culture quite well. And even mastered origami, the art of folding paper figures. I could turn a napkin into a cat with just a few deft movements. When Dad's contract ended, we moved back to Hollywood. The life of the daughter of a celebrity had its advantages. For example, my father introduced me to his fellow actors, and I even had the chance to attend the Oscars a couple of times. Is that Tom Holland? I think I'm gonna faint. However, such a life also had a lot of disadvantages. Dad was constantly hounded by paparazzi who dreamed of finding out a dirty secret of his and making a sensation out of it. So I always had to be very careful to not act out. Otherwise, photos of me could appear online. Can you imagine how embarrassing the daughter of a celebrity was seen picking her nose? I turned 16. After several unsuccessful movies, Dad was no longer as popular as he used to be. So he was ecstatic when he was offered a new role in a Japanese TV series.
Pack your bags, we're moving to Japan.
Yay! I was over the moon because I'd spent my childhood there, and I felt like Japan was my home. After moving, I was transferred to a new school and became fast friends with my classmates. I'd always been modest and never asked for any special treatment just because my dad was a celebrity. But my classmates immediately found out whose daughter I was and became obsessed with that news.
Can you ask your dad to sign this?
I want your autograph too! Easy, guys! You'll crush me! Everyone was nice to me, except for one surly guy called Takashi. Every time I passed him by, he rolled his eyes like he was allergic to me.
Why is everyone so interested in the daughter of a second-rate actor?
I didn't know what his deal was, and I didn't want to fight. So I just ignored him. He pretended I didn't exist right back. One day, the producers arranged an autograph session with my dad as part of the advertising campaign for the series. There were more people there than in the Tokyo subway during rush hour. I came to support my father and hung out there while I talked to his fans. All of a sudden, I noticed a weird guy in torn sneakers and a battered t-shirt. He was excitedly pressing a poster of the future series to his chest and waiting for his turn to take a picture with my dad. He felt my look and smiled.
Hello, are you a fan of Robert X too?
Well, you could say that.
I'm so nervous.
Relax. The actors are just ordinary people.
No, you don't get it. I've been waiting for this meeting my whole life. After all, Robert X is my father.
With those words, he took another step towards my dad as the queue moved. I froze. What did he just say? My dad was my dad. The nerve of him. I knew that some crazy fans would do anything to trick their idols into paying attention to them, and I was sure that was what was going on. However, I couldn't help feeling anxious. I wanted to ask him more questions, but I lost him in the crowd. The next day at school, I was in for some unfortunate news. A charity concert was to take place soon. The students were supposed to come up with short scripts and act them out in traditional costumes. Transforming into a samurai or geisha sounded fun. I liked the task itself. However, guess who I was told to work with? Bingo! Eternally moody Takashi. He wasn't happy when he found out we would have to spend a lot of our time together either. We tried to convince the teacher to give us different partners, but it didn't work. Damn it.
Okay, let's declare a temporary truce. I'll write the script and you can design the costumes. Think you can manage that without screwing up?
Hey, who put you in charge?
Why? Are you gonna come running to daddy crying?
You're so rude!
And you're stuck up.
Ugh! Would I really have to put up with him? I walked home feeling sad and angry and thinking of ways to put Takashi in his place. And then I noticed that guy in worn sneakers again. He was selling street food. I wanted to come up to him and finish our conversation, but he quickly pulled up all of his stuff and wandered off. Something told me that our meeting wasn't an accident. I decided to follow him. Soon, we came to a small house. He walked inside and I carefully looked through the window. Wow, you won't believe what I saw. Everything in his room was covered with photos and posters of my dad. That guy was either Dad's biggest fan or truly believed that Robert X was his father. It bothered me, and I decided to talk to Dad. Dad, tell me honestly, do you have a son?
Honey, what are you talking about?
You're a good actor, but I can tell when you're lying. Dad shook his head bitterly and told me the truth.
When your mom was pregnant with you, I had an affair with a makeup artist, and she had a boy. I truly regret it. I don't know how you found out about this, Hannah, but you must keep it a secret, or my career will be over and your mom will leave me.
I couldn't believe it, and I didn't know what to think. Dad did a terrible thing, but I didn't want our family to be destroyed because of it. So I promised to keep my mouth shut. I wanted to get to know my brother, even though we had different moms. The next morning, I bought rice cakes before school and headed to that house. A nice woman and Akira opened the door. I told them I knew everything, and they let me in. I was horrified to see the poverty they lived in. It was so unfair that one of Dad's kids never needed for anything, and the other had to sell street food to provide for himself and his mom.
I always knew who my dad was, and that he abandoned us, but I had no idea I had a sister.
It was a shock for me, too. I'm sure Dad will visit you when he has time. I told them I wanted to do something to help them because it was obvious that Akira and his mother were short on money. But in return, I asked them not to tell anyone Dad's secret. We chatted for a long time. Then I looked at my watch and my blood ran cold. Damn it, I was late for the first class. I ran to school and almost knocked Takashi down in the doorway. Ugh, why was it always him?
Do you think that since you're the daughter of a famous actor, you can skip classes?
Back off, Takashi! He was so annoying! After class, I told Dad I had talked to his son.
What? Why, Hannah?
That's not the important part, Dad. They're very poor and they need help. Can you give me some money? I'll take it to them. Dad gave me a wad of cash without hesitation. I asked him if he wanted to visit his son himself.
Of course I want to, but I can't do it right now. Journalists are following me around. We can't let them suspect anything.
The journalists really had been very active lately. I agreed Dad shouldn't try to meet his son yet. Not because I was worried about his career. I just didn't want Mom to find out about everything. It would have destroyed her. I took the money and I gave it to Akira. He and his mom were so grateful they almost burst into tears. Helping people felt pretty great. I walked out of their house and ran into Takashi. Can you believe it? Was he stalking me now?
What are you doing instead of preparing our costumes for the performance? I'm not going to be the only one working on this project.
Does it give you pleasure to ruin my mood?
Oh, please. If it wasn't for the school assignment, I wouldn't even be talking to you.
Ugh, I should be paid for putting up with you at all. I snapped at him and I walked back home. The next morning, Dad looked more lost and nervous than ever, and I immediately realized that something bad had happened.
Hannah, who did you tell my secret to?
What are you talking about? I promised not to tell, and I didn't. He said that someone was sending him weird messages and blackmailing him. They said they would tell the reporters everything if Dad didn't pay them. It was nuts. In just a week, my life had turned into some sort of melodrama. I spent the whole day at school trying to figure out who could have found out about our secret family. Then, my eyes fell on Takashi. It seemed so obvious. I ran into him next to Akira's house after handing over the money to my brother. He must have overheard us. I wouldn't let him get away with it. I stormed up to Takashi and I asked him if he knew that my father had a secret son. My classmate's reaction surprised me. He shrugged indifferently and said that he did know about it. And you decided to blackmail my dad to get easy money?
I don't need your father or his money. Got it, you psycho?
With those words, he angrily walked into the classroom. Even though I didn't like Takashi, he didn't seem to be lying. If he wasn't the one blackmailing Dad, then who was? I called Akira and I asked him if they could have accidentally revealed the truth to someone.
Are you kidding me? Of course not. My mom and I are incredibly grateful for your help, and we would never let you down like that.
I told my brother that someone was threatening to tell the journalists about everything, and I asked him for advice because I had no idea what to do.
I can't believe there are such shameless people out there. They have no honor at all. But Hannah, I'm afraid you'll have to pay them. Our dad's fans could turn their backs on him if they found out something unpleasant about him.
Akira was right. I had no choice but to comply with their demands. My dad and I came to a park and put a bag full of money on a bench, just like we were told. After that, a mysterious guy in a mask drove up to it on a bike, quickly grabbed the money, and left. Dad and I hoped that would be the end of our crazy adventures. But it was just the beginning. The blackmailer demanded more and more money. Dad even had to give them his fee for the series. I sold my jewelry and even thought about cutting off and selling my hair. Anything to protect my family. The only thing that stopped me would be having to explain why I'd done it to my mother. Soon, we had no more money to pay for their silence. I tried to convince Dad to go to the police, but he was afraid of bad publicity. I didn't know what to do. I was sitting on the school porch when Takashi sat down with me. That was the last thing I needed.
Are you messing around again? What about our project?
Leave me alone! I have bigger problems. I tried to chase him away, but he wouldn't back off. I told him about all my problems.
Okay, stop feeling sorry for yourself. I'll help you, and then you'll finally make our costumes. I don't want to fail this assignment because of you.
Well, I could really use some help. We discussed everything, and here's what happened next. Instead of cash, I put napkins in the bag and left it on the same bench as usual. The guy in the mask grabbed it, got on his bike, and left. However, this time, Takashi followed him. After some time, my classmate came back and handed me a piece of paper with an address on it.
Your blackmailer lives there.
Great, that was all I needed. Thank you, Takashi. You're not a nice guy, but you are a good one. Even though you piss me off.
Yeah, you're all right too, I guess. Even though you piss me off.
He left, and I called Dad and asked him to come at once. A few minutes later, he picked me up in a taxi and we headed to that address. On the way there, I told Dad how I managed to get it. When we arrived, I couldn't believe my eyes. We were standing in front of Akira's house. Was he the guy in the mask? Dad and I ran into the house and saw Akira and his mother, who were pulling napkins out of the bag, confused. Look at this, Dad. You were blackmailed by your own son. Dad stared at them and said he had never seen that woman before and that Akira was not his son. What? The guy and his mom started crying and begging us to not hand them over to police.
We'll give you back all the money. Please don't report us.
It turned out they were professional scammers. They'd blackmailed a lot of celebrities before. Our meeting at the autograph session wasn't a coincidence. Even back then, that bastard knew perfectly well whose daughter I was. He had planned everything. They gave back everything they'd taken from us, and we left their house. Can you believe it? That wasn't the end of it either. A crowd of reporters was waiting for us outside. It turned out that the taxi driver had overheard my talk with Dad and immediately called the journalists. They certainly weren't wasting any time. Dad refused to say anything, and that didn't help his image. The next day, an article went viral on the internet saying that Akira was Dad's secret love child. We tried to prove those guys were just scammers, of course. Unfortunately, Dad's reputation had already been ruined. The worst thing was that Mom also found out about everything. She immediately packed her things and moved to a hotel. Was this the end? That's when I realized Dad hadn't denied having a son. If it wasn't Akira, then who was his real son?
Okay, I've got nothing to lose anymore. Let's go. I'll introduce you to him.
Soon, we came to a house. A woman called Miyaka opened the door.
What are you doing here? I want to see my son.
Standing behind that woman was Takashi. What was he doing here?
Who are you talking to?
I was so confused. Was Takashi my brother? Miyaka sighed heavily and let us in so we could talk. It turned out that Dad had been trying to keep in touch with Takashi all those years, but his mom had been against it. She forbade them from communicating and didn't accept any of Dad's gifts. Takashi, so you knew I was your sister?
I did, right from the start. It's just that Mom always said Dad was terrible since he left us. I was mad at him and I didn't want to get to know either of you. But you're all right. I'm sorry that I was insufferable. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have turned Takashi against his father.
Dad apologized for a long time and even promised to help them financially, but they refused.
There's no need. We have everything we need.
By the end of the evening, Dad and Takashi found a common language. Miyaka also relented and let them keep in touch. I was glad I had such an independent and honest brother. Soon, journalists revealed that Akira was just a con man and not the son of a famous actor, so Dad was able to keep working on the series. Takashi and I grew closer and did an amazing project. Still, I wouldn't say my story has a happy ending. After all, Mom is still mad at Dad and is in no hurry to come back. Do you think my family will ever reunite?